And hello, everyone on YouTube. Hello, everyone out there in the Zoomiverse. It's Janine Stanley, and we are here with Afternoon at the Museum from IRA. Today, we are going to visit the Presidential Pet Museum with a special guest. So let me introduce everyone that we have here with us today. We have our lovely hostess, Miss Stephanie Watts. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, Janine. Hi, everyone in the Zoomiverse. I love that.
Yeah, that's my stuff. I like to make up a new word each
Zoomiverse
time,
and YouTube land.
Hello. Yes. Absolutely. We also have Ryan Bishop behind the scenes, the man behind the curtain.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here on this Friday.
Yeah. And our special guest today is from the Presidential Pet Museum, Mr. Andrew Hager. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here, and I'm glad to be going Zoomiversal.
There we go. There we go. I think you beat me on that one. So before we get going here and hop into the museum, and we also have the most important person here, Agent Sierra. Hello, Sierra.
Hello.
Hey, everybody met Sierra last week at the San Diego Zoo, which we had way too much fun on that.
That was so much fun.
Okay.
Great.
That was great. So, Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself and your position with the Presidential Pet Museum, because this is kind of fun. One of our own, as they say.
Yes, my name's Andrew Hager. I am the historian in residence at the Presidential Pet Museum. For a long time, I was a middle school social studies teacher, an English teacher, and I retired from that in 2016. And I got a call from a friend who said, "Oh, hey, would you like to get paid to do some writing about history?" And I said, "I'd like to get paid." And it turned out she was working for a guy who was taking over the Presidential Pet Museum, our director, Bill Hellman, and they brought me on. And I'm so glad to be here today. I'm legally blind. I travel with a guide dog named Sammy. He's a black Labrador retriever. I got him from Guide Dogs of America in Silmar, California. And so, anytime I'm talking with people, in my community, it's especially exciting for me. So I'm really happy to be here today.
This is awesome. This program is ruled by black Labradors. Ryan has a black lab named Australia. So, and she has snored on our podcast before. No reflection on the content. However,
I'm not so sure.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Sierra, who will start sharing her screen from the museum. And Stephanie, let's see what we're going to look at today and what we're going to ask Andrew about.
Well, Andrew, this is going to be a little bit of a atypical show for me because, to be honest, I had never thought about a presidential pet museum until Janine mentioned it a few weeks ago, and that we were going to be visiting with you. So what I would like to do, with your okay, is to allow you to just go ahead and start talking, and I might interject here and there just to kind of help set some things up. But sure. Honestly, you have a lot of information to share, and we're so happy to have you with us. So go for it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, I'll start with sort of the history of the museum. Currently, we are online only. We were looking for a permanent home, but then the pandemic happened, and so eventually we're hoping to open up an actual storefront location somewhere in the Baltimore, D.C. metro area. Bill Hellman, the director, and I are both in suburban Baltimore. The museum was started by a woman named Claire McLean in 1999. She got the idea to start this museum because she was a dog groomer specifically for Bouvier de Flanders dogs. And in the 80s, Ronald Reagan had a Bouvier de Flanders dog named Lucky. And Ms. McLean was brought in to groom this dog. And apparently, by her description, there was like a little shed off to the side of the White House. I can't even imagine a shed on the White House property, but they had a shed where they would bring her and they would bring this dog and she would groom the dog. And the Secret Service would watch her the whole time. And then at the end, she got the idea to scoop up and save the dog hair, which she took home and made into mixed media art paintings. And That's
Oh.
rather unusual.
Yeah,
now
painting.
the-
I thought you were going to say sweater, maybe.
Well, with a
I know.
Bouvier and the amount of hair they have,
That
you
could be a
probably
sweater.
you could get a sweater after a while. Yes.
Yeah.
No, Lucky didn't get to stay at the White House for very long because he was if you know Bouviers, they're large dogs and they're very
Yeah.
powerful. There's a famous picture of Ronald Reagan being dragged across the lawn by Lucky while Margaret Thatcher laughs at him.
Oh my. Oh,
They eventually
okay.
decided this dog isn't the right energy level and temperament for the White House. So Lucky went to live on the Reagan's ranch in California, and they ended up getting a Cavalier King Charles. But this had planted the seed in Ms. McLean's mind that she was really interested in presidential dogs, sort of connecting herself to the long history. And she began to research this. And in 1999, she started this museum out of her house. And that worked for like a few days until she advertised it. And then a tour bus showed up at her house and people were lined up around the block to come into her home. And she decided, well, we should probably have a different place. So they were in Williamsburg, Virginia for a while at a place called President's Park, although my understanding is that doesn't exist anymore. In 2017, Ms. McLean, who is in her 80s, decided, it might be time to pass the torch. And she found Bill Hellman, who's a dog adventurer. He has these huskies that he goes out and he attaches them to a bicycle and they pull him. It's really very interesting. Yeah, well, he discovered that huskies have so much energy, but they don't want to fetch, they don't want to tug, they just want to pull things. And so he figured out how to attach them to a recumbent bike, and they take him out on the trails and they pull him like on the C&O Canal Trail and things like that. Very interesting. So he's really into dogs, and he heard about this museum being available and he took it over. And then I was brought in and he said, well, you can give yourself any role you want at the museum. And I said, oh, historian in residence. That sounds really pompous. So it was kind of funny to me. And so now I'm the historian in residence, and I have to explain that every time I give an interview. No, I don't actually reside anywhere. It was just me making a joke, but here we are. 4 years later. I was only I started in the middle of 2017, and President Trump did not have any animals in the White House, and so for the first several years, I thought I knew what this job was, a couple hours a week, maybe writing a blog post or doing a stray interview here or there. And then when President Biden was elected in November, all of a sudden, I'm getting 3 or 4 interview requests a week, and there's all kinds of craziness going on. I mean, it's been insane. It's interesting to see how much people love presidential animals. And it's something that I hadn't given a lot of thought to prior to becoming the historian. Although I should say that when I was a kid, Barbara Bush published Millie's book, which was supposedly told to her by her English Springer Spaniel, Millie. And I got that for Christmas in 1991 or 92.
Oh, boy.
So that was some foreshadowing that I wasn't aware of at the time. And I also remember the very first book I ever checked out of my elementary school library was about one of George Washington's dogs, Vulcan, stealing a ham from his dinner table and running away to the kennels to eat it. So I have this connection going back that I didn't realize until, I'm in my mid-30s, and then this sort of falls into my lap. And, and then you sort of realize, yes, I do find this interesting, and I have thought about this way more than I ever realized I had thought about it. You think about the Barney Bush and the Obama dogs and Socks the cat and all the presidential pets in our lifetimes. And, the media gives them a lot of attention. And so whether you know it or not, you actually probably have absorbed a lot of presidential pet information. Well, and I'm sorry, I've just been rambling here, but
no.
Wow,
that is quite all right. I think that really sets the stage, though, because you were the historian in waiting, and now you're the historian in residence, and I'm sure we have a lot of interesting presidential pets to cover. What I would like to do before we delve into more is ask Sierra to let us know what's being shared on screen. And then, Andrew, we can maybe, if you would indulge us, maybe suggest some of the online content that Sierra can share,
sure,
so that our audience that has vision can also see as we're talking. That sound okay? Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I have the Presidential Pet Museum website up, presidentialpetmuseum.com. And at the top of the page, in the middle of the page, there's kind of an emblem, a round emblem with the White House behind it. And inside the emblem, it says the Presidential Pet Museum. And then it says, the Presidential Pet Museum seal, and then First Pets of USA. And inside the seal, there's like a dog's paw print. And then there is a white dog. It kind of looks wolf-like, so maybe it's meant to be a husky. And then the background, there's an outline of the United States with the American flag in it. And then it says, it's a little small, but it says E pluribus unum. Which I suppose is probably Latin there, and a little American flag at the top above the seal. Then there's a menu below that. In the menu, it's a drop-down menu. So we have museum, and then there's more subsections below that. There's White House Pets, and the subsections are kind of organized by years. Then there's the blog link, Facebook, trivia, and gift shop.
Always a gift shop.
Gift
We
Yes.
love the gift shop.
If you have a museum, you have to have a gift shop.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so then below that, the background of the website is kind of like a soft medium blue color. And then there's some posts with headers. So the first one I see on the page is learn all about US presidents and their many pets, past and present. And there's like a written area below that. And then it talks about presidential pets and has some highlights under there. And then there's another header below that that says in the news. And there's some links to, looks like different news, like Time Magazine, Delaware Today, Washington Post. So let's see, it says, check out who we've been talking to. So those are what those links are for.
It's all those interviews Andrew's been doing.
Yeah, those are the interviews I've been doing. Yes, and if you get a chance at some point, the Time Magazine piece is really good. They did a nice job with that, and it's me and somebody from the Delaware Humane Society talking about Joe Biden being the first president with a shelter rescue dog in the White House, which is Major, his German Shepherd. Now, Major was just recently in the news for nipping a Secret Service agent, and it was reported on CNN like he ripped the guy's arm off, and like he's now banned from the White House, and the White House kind of backtracked on that and said he did bite somebody. It didn't break the skin. The agent, was treated and went about his duties. And the dogs went to Delaware for a little bit of training. They'll be back. Don't worry. This wouldn't be the first time this has happened, though, because Theodore Roosevelt had a dog named Pete, like either a bulldog or a bull terrier. And Pete chased the French ambassador up a tree and ripped his pants off.
Oh my gosh.
Which led to a formal complaint from the French government, which led to Pete being sent away. Like you can't live at the White House. You're ripping the pants off of the ambassador, Pete.
Andrew, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. Because what I'd like to do, since you mentioned Major, and I'm sure we don't have internet content for the French ambassador's story, can we pull up a picture of Major?
Yeah,
He has two dogs, right? Is that
yeah, he has
correct?
Major and Champ. He's had Champ since 2008. Champ joined the Biden family after the election to vice president. And then Major joined in 2018. If you go to the menu and go to White House Pets, and then it kind of breaks down by era. If you click on 1953 to today, it should show you all the different presidents with President Biden at the top. And then you should be able to click on Major or Champ or both and see pictures.
Okay, awesome. Yeah,
I
I
would love
see
a
that here.
description of Major and Champ
Yeah.
and the French ambassadors.
I was going to say, I bet there's no picture of that.
No,
No.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Like, oops.
Franklin Roosevelt also had a German Shepherd named Major, who apparently was very nervous in the White House and had to leave to go stay somewhere else as well. So maybe naming your German Shepherd Major and bringing them to the White House isn't the the best. There's kind of an iffy tradition there, but
For the
Oh,
aspiring
sure.
presidents out there
Yeah, but
in
That's
Zoomville.
right.
but these dogs are adorable, and hopefully everything will be fine. German Shepherds are kind of a high-strung breed anyway, which is why, like when I was getting my guide dog, I did a lot of research on what kinds of breeds they use, and it said in my research that they don't really use German Shepherds as often anymore, in part because they can be very anxious and high-strung. And that's one of the reasons why so many places have moved to Labradors or other breeds. Although I know hip dysplasia also is a problem with shepherds, and that's
Yeah.
one reason. They told me that at Guide Dogs of America, that they said the shepherds didn't fail us, we failed the shepherds because we haven't been able to breed the dysplasia out.
I see.
But so, yeah, Major is our first shelter dog in the White House. And I think that's really kind of indicative of
Mhm.
the change in society in the last 30 or 40 years, where more and more people are moving away from buying specific breeds and going into adoption instead,
Mhm.
for ethical reasons, because, you read about puppy mills and the things that happen. And, it's a movement in our country. And I think, the presidents and their pet choices tend to be reflective of what we as the United States, how we feel about our animals at a given time. If you go back to George Washington's time, they were basically hunting dogs. People didn't keep their dogs in the house most of the time, because if it was warm, your dog would have fleas, and they didn't have medicine for that. Your dog stayed out in the barn or in a kennel somewhere. And then by the time you get to the early 20th century, we've started to create dog food so they're not having to eat table scraps. We're starting to, figure out some flea medication and treatment so they're inside more often, although you still have dog houses for the summer months and that kind of thing. So, the presidents follow all of these trends just like regular Americans.
So do we have pictures there of Major and Champ?
Yes.
Can you
I
describe?
have one of Major up, and then there's also a link to Champ after that. So the picture of Major is a very high definition, high quality photo. The background's a bit blurry, and you can see grass behind him. He's running towards the camera, and he's got his tongue out to the left, kind of like hanging out as he runs. It almost looks like his mouth is agape, so he looks kind of like he's almost smiling. He's got kind of like amber brown eyes, and he's a bit darker than most German Shepherds. He's mostly black, and then he's got some patches on his chest that are a tan, but almost like a cream color. Like he's almost white and black. And then under his chin, he also has that kind of cream color as well. And then a black nose and a long fluffy tail, and about, let's see, there's another picture here. He doesn't have super long hair. It's kind of like medium length hair. And this other picture of him shows him on a field, and it's a photo by the official White House photographer. And he's also got that cream color on his legs and belly as well, because you can see more of him in this one.
Andrew, do you know Major's height and weight before we move away to Champ?
I don't know that. I wouldn't be able to estimate a height on a shepherd, but I know that they can weigh usually around 100 pounds. So they're fairly large dogs, and given the size and the high energy, I mean, some of you may have heard back in November or December that President-elect Biden fractured his foot playing with Major. So that's not surprising given, the size of the dog and also the age of the president, who is 78. So, things tend to break a little more easily, but they, they're very, shepherds are known as very loyal dogs. And, that's, so I'm sure that, that's one of the reasons why the Bidens love the shepherds.
Kara, do we?
I'm going to go back and find the picture of Champ now. All right.
Champ is also a shepherd as well?
Yes. And he's, I believe, 13 years old, maybe 13 and a half or so. So he's probably coming up on the end of his lifespan, unfortunately, but he did live at the Naval Observatory with the Bidens when they were there for 8 years. And he's lived with them, in the years since in Delaware. And, he's apparently quite a great dog.
So yeah, we've got one photo of him on this page. You can tell he's 13. He's actually lying down on the same field, I think, where they were photographing Major. He's got a bit longer hair than Major, and he's more of the traditional kind of tan brown mixed with black kind of areas. So his face is mostly dark black, but then he's got some salt and pepper colors around his muzzle from aging, it looks like. His tongue is out and he's kind of looking off to the left, and then his ears are slightly back. And it looks like the First Lady's leaning over him and stroking his back. And he's just kind of relaxing on a partly cloudy day on the field.
He's chilling. He's
Yeah.
getting ready. He's going to retirement. Like, oh, Major's here. I don't have to work so hard.
Yeah, let's just hope that Major doesn't get both dogs in trouble. Major's the one causing the problems, breaking feet and nipping Secret Service
Poor
agents.
guy.
He's just a little high strung. He'll be all right.
Well, if you think about being at the White House, like if you were an anxious person, let alone an anxious dog, I mean, the number of people coming in and out, strangers all the time, never any privacy, it's got to be very, nerve-wracking for a dog. So I can understand.
So, Andrew, do you have any suggestions as to how we should proceed? Do you want
let's
back or back?
Let's go back to that menu to White House pets, and I believe the era before 1953. I don't remember the exact years, but we want the section that's right before 1953 because I think that'll also cover the 1920s, and I want to go to Calvin Coolidge.
Okay, that's 1889 to 1953.
Okay, yeah, there'll be a lot of stuff for us to talk about here between Coolidge and Teddy Roosevelt and some others. But I want to go to Calvin Coolidge because one of my favorite White House pets is a raccoon that he had named Rebecca.
Oh my gosh. Wow, he had a lot of pets. There's a list of all of his pets here.
Teddy Roosevelt had the most. He had around 40. Calvin Coolidge had a couple of dozen. Now, some of these never lived at the White House. Like Coolidge was given pygmy hippos by Harvey Firestone, the tire magnate. And I don't understand why you would give a president hippos. Like, it just doesn't make, it's like the world's deadliest animal. What are you doing? Coolidge was like, look, just send them to the zoo. Thanks, Harvey. Great job. But the Coolidges were known for having lots of pets. And Rebecca's a really interesting story because she was never intended to be a pet for the Coolidges. She was sent to them by a supporter from Mississippi, and the supporter intended Rebecca to be their Thanksgiving dinner. Now, I don't know if that's something people traditionally did in Mississippi in the 1920s, or if it still happens that people eat raccoon. Because we didn't have the refrigeration at the time and transportation was slow, you couldn't kill the raccoon first. You had to send a live raccoon and have it killed when it got there. And when the Coolidges opened the package and saw this raccoon, they were like, we can't kill her. And they kept her. They named her Rebecca. They bought her a collar that said White House Raccoon. And they even took her to the White House Easter egg roll, although she apparently, tore up somebody's stockings or dress or something, because she's a raccoon, not really a docile, housebroken animal. They did build her a habitat in a tree outside the Oval Office so that Coolidge could, look at her occasionally while he worked. And they got her a male raccoon named Reuben, but Rebecca just wasn't into Reuben. She started trying to run away from the White House once Reuben came. So, not all love matches work out.
There was no eHarmony there. There's a little
it was more like Married at First Sight, and it just didn't pan out.
Can we get a description of Rebecca?
Yeah, I see two pictures here of Rebecca. So the first one underneath the photo, it says Grace Coolidge with a Rebecca, a cherished pet raccoon. The photo is kind of a black and white sepia tone photo, and it's a close-up of Grace Coolidge kind of looking off into the distance, her body kind of half turned towards the camera. And then she's holding Rebecca, and you can see Rebecca's face, one of her paws and part of her back. So she's about kind of like the size of a large cat. She's got black stripes going from each eye out towards the outside sides of her face. She's got a white snout, white whiskers, and then I presume she's probably gray since she's a raccoon, except the photo's black and white. So she has very little paws. They almost look like little hands, very like rodent-like feet, and then small little triangular ears. And her face is kind of going out from the cheeks, like the hair kind of stretches out from the cheeks, so it's kind of looks long and wide. And then there's another photo of Rebecca, and that's like kind of her full body. It looks like it was probably in like an oval frame. And she's standing up, and she's very chubby. She's got a very rounded body, and especially towards like the backside of her body. And then on her tail, it's kind of like a fluffy tail, and then she's got black stripes going across her tail.
Got the rings on the tail.
I just can't imagine. Now it would actually be illegal if a president tried to keep a raccoon within city limits of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how the way presidents interacted with animals sort of mirrored the country at the time. I mean, this was a period where people were into really exotic animals, things that now we would never consider as pets. I mean, I've read stories of people going door to door selling monkeys. A lot of people had pet alligators, which is where you get that urban legend about, in New York, the sewers are all full of alligators because people would flush them down the toilet. Just things that we don't do today, or that wouldn't be legal to own today. And the raccoons would be one of those things. I want to take us back to the main Calvin Coolidge page. So if I hit the back button once and you see the list of Calvin Coolidge's pets, let's click on Rob Roy, because there's, he was probably the most famous Coolidge pet. They had two white collies, Rob Roy and Prudence Prim. And the Coolidges were so associated with these pets that actually Rob Roy appeared in Grace Coolidge's First Lady portrait, her official White House portrait. And that's the only time, as far as I know, that a presidential animal has appeared in the official portrait. But like I said, these were just sort of Coolidge's trademark animals, and they were known as animal lovers. So, it was quite a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is Rob Roy in terms of
breed? I'm sorry, I didn't say the breed, did I?
No, I didn't. Alligator, crocodile, dog.
Rob Roy was a white collie, and so was Prudence Prim, like entirely white collie. I'm sorry, I should have.
No, I think you may have said it. I was just so taken with the other things.
Is that the dog that's on the seal?
No, the dog that's on the seal is a husky, because Bill Hellman, our director, loves huskies. Although there's a picture somewhere of Warren Harding with sled dogs, like being pulled by huskies. He was the first president to go to Alaska, and he got pulled by huskies, but he never owned any.
So Rob Roy is he's a
white collie.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. And we have a picture of Rob here if you'd like a description.
Yes.
So underneath this photo, it says President Coolidge, his wife Grace, and one of their white collies, Rob Roy, circa 1925. So Coolidge is standing on the left and Grace is standing on the right. He's got kind of a stern expression on his face. His hair is kind of combed towards the back of his head. And then he's wearing kind of like a cream colored or tan, like light suit. And then we've got Grace, and she's got kind of like looks like a robe, it's like a dress with like a tie around the middle, and then a very long hanging necklace. It looks like very 1920s style, which makes sense for the time, and her hair is in an updo on top of her head. And then in the middle, it looks like Grace is holding the leash. And then we see Rob Roy, and Rob Roy is looking at the camera, panting with his tongue out. And he's kind of squinting, so maybe it was like a sunny day. And he's got a lot of hair on his chest, like extra long hair, kind of like a mane, but he's completely white, and his ears are back in the photo. It's definitely like a friendly dog stance there with the tongue out and the ears back and the squinting eyes. And then there is, let's see, there's, oh, okay. And then here's actually an image of the painting of the presidential portrait of the First Lady. So it says Rob Roy is immortalized in this painting with First Lady Grace Coolidge. It hangs prominently on the south wall of the China Room in the White House. It was said to be Jackie Kennedy's favorite White House painting. And this painting is very long. It's kind of just like a very tall painting and narrow. And then it shows Grace, and she's wearing another dress in that style from the photo, except this one is kind of like a orangey red color. The painting is done, it looks like oil painting, and it's very impressionistic. So there's a lot of like strokes that you can see in the painting as opposed to photorealistic. There's some trees behind her. You can see kind of the outline of the White House behind her, and then Rob Roy is sitting to the left of her. Grace has her arm kind of out towards Rob and her hand on Rob's head, and Rob is looking up at her with his tongue out again, and then a lot of white hair coming from his chest and his belly, and a very long fluffy tail, and he's sitting right next to her.
Adorable.
Oh.
It's a wonderful picture. Just a gorgeous painting.
There's actually another photo of Rob Roy down here. So the next one says President Coolidge plays with Rob Roy, October 31st, 1924. So that one shows Coolidge in a black tie suit. He's out on the White House grounds, kind of in a field. And then it shows some people standing off in the distance behind them. And Rob Roy is actually standing on his hind legs towards Coolidge, and Coolidge is holding up his paws. So they're both kind of standing across from each other, which is quite sweet.
Cute.
They look like they're dancing almost. Like
They
it's
do.
I was gonna say, it sounds like they're like little dance pose.
And Rob Roy is pretty tall. He comes up to like probably like the upper chest of Coolidge.
I was
Oh,
going to
On
say
his hind
Coolidge
legs.
was pretty tall himself, as I remember reading.
yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
So he's kind of a big boy. Yeah.
Yeah. I can just imagine how much of that white hair ended up all over.
Oh my
Those
goodness.
Over that
suits.
suit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they had probably lots of people there to do all the lint rolling and hair rolling.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah. Their dry cleaning bills from the White House in that era were extremely high.
Sure.
So, there are lots of things to talk about, and now my mind is kind of wanting to take you to places where I know there are specific photographs, as opposed to, if we go too far back in history, we don't have a lot of images of the presidential pets. We just have more representational pictures, like Benjamin Harrison had opossums. We don't have a picture of the opossums, so I think on that site there's probably just a picture of a random opossum, like a stock photo. So that's a little less interesting. So I do want to just talk about Teddy Roosevelt for a minute, and we don't have a lot of pictures of his animals. There are some, but we're turn of the century photography, and you had to sit still for so long in 1905 to get your picture taken that there aren't very many of the pets.
Right.
But Teddy had around 40 animals. He had many dogs. He had flying squirrels. His kids had snakes. There's a great story that one of his kids, I believe Quentin, went to the local pet store and bought 5 or 6 snakes and brought them into the White House. There was a cabinet meeting going on. He just ran in and dumped the snakes on the table, which caused all the cabinet secretaries to freak out and run away. And then he and his dad had to pick the snakes back up and, recover them. And apparently by that point, a couple of the snakes had started fighting each other. And Quentin was instructed to take the snakes back to the pet store and get a refund. But Teddy Roosevelt was a naturalist, sort of. That was his hobby. People think of him as a hunter, and he was, but one of the reasons why he did so much hunting was because in those days, that's how people studied animals. You would kill the animal and then bring it back to your museum or wherever, and you would stuff it and you'd study it, and you'd get to know it in that sense. They didn't have a lot of the Jane Goodall, sit out in the woods and observe kind of naturalism. So he had grown up doing his own taxidermy as a child. Which must have been terrible for the Roosevelt's maid back in the 1870s.
Yes.
There's this 10-year-old kid stuffing rodents in his bedroom, and
Yikes.
just like
Yeah.
stuff that I would not allow my children to do. You know? My favorite Roosevelt pet, and I wish we had a picture of this. We don't. He had a badger named Josiah.
Oh
It was given to him on a campaign stop. He's riding around the country in a train doing the whole whistle stop thing. You know, he stops at a place in Kansas and gives a 5-minute speech. A little girl comes up with a basket and says, "Mr. President, would you like a badger?" And, you know, he just says like, "Bully," and takes the badger. And, you know, he writes his son a letter saying like, "I was just given a badger and it bit me. How wonderful." You know, and it, you know, which, if a badger bit me, well, first of all, I'm not taking the badger. But secondly, once it bites me, the badger gets released back into the Kansas plains. I'm not. But he brought it home, and they built a habitat for it in the White House inside, and it lived there for a little while before eventually becoming too destructive and having to move to the Rock Creek Zoo, which is now the National Zoo or the Smithsonian Zoo. So that's Teddy.
Wait, Andrew, wait a minute. Before you go further, let me ask Sierra. This is the beauty of Ira. We could be anywhere in the museum and stop. Wait, Sierra, can you do an internet search for a picture of maybe the badger?
We have to find out if there or a picture of a badger, so we can kind of see these things get like they're a little bigger than raccoons, as I recall, and they are super destructive. So are raccoons.
And that a little girl gave him the badger in her bag.
Where did this little girl get her badger, and what were her parents thinking? You know, like, sure. And what did the Secret Service think? You know, like you're rolling up to the president with a badger, you know, like now you'd get tased. They wouldn't be, you know. Tased, you'd be lucky to get tased if you showed up with a badger.
There is actually a picture on this site. It's probably not the badger, but if it's of a child holding a badger. It looks like a child who's probably around like 7 or 8, a little boy, and he's holding a badger. But it's an old black and white photo. The boy's got white shorts and just like a white button up, it looks like. And then he's holding the badger in both of his hands, like each hand from left to right is holding underneath the badger's stomach. And then the badger looks not super comfortable because its hind legs are like kind of reaching up towards where the kid's hands are. And it's the position the badger's in now. He looks very wide, like almost circular, but also very flat. And that might be the way that the badger's contorting. And then he's got kind of like a stub tail. It's probably about like 5 inches, and it's got gray hair on it. And then on Google, I have another more close-up picture. It looks like there's some different types of badgers, but let me look up like American badger.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Because
I know there are tons of memes about like the honey badger, like honey badger don't care. You know?
Oh yeah. The meanest animal in the world, supposedly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is a badger. Okay.
Okay. So the American one, according to Google, seems to be kind of like, looks like about raccoon size, but like wider. It's gray, and then it's got black feet, and its feet are very short and kind of chubby. So it's very low to the ground. And then its face, it's kind of like a rodent face, so it kind of comes to a point at the end.
It's making it worse and worse.
It just really is.
So its face, it's got kind of a big nose, a big black nose, which is cute. And then down the middle of its head, there's a white stripe. And then down from each eye to the mouth, there's a white stripe on either side as well, followed by a black stripe. So their faces are like black and white. And then they've got really short, rounded ears that are very hairy, but very small.
It just isn't getting any better for me.
Very skunk-like to me, except for the tail. It doesn't the skunk tail.
Okay.
It's kind of like a skunk mixed with a possum or something.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, this is what you give the president.
So I take it this is not what you want for your holiday gift.
No badgers.
Stephanie is out with the badger.
I'm out.
Sorry. So if we go back to the White House Pets page where you can see the eras, and we're still in that same era of 1880 to 1953. If we go to Franklin Roosevelt, one of the most famous presidential pets of all time is Fala, his Scottish Terrier.
Mhm.
And Fala traveled everywhere with Roosevelt, was sort of synonymous with Roosevelt. And actually, the Roosevelt Memorial in D.C., there's a statue of Franklin Roosevelt, and Fala is actually memorialized in this statue as well. One of my favorite things about Fala is that in 1944, the congressional Republicans, or perhaps just the Republican Party in general, because they were running against Roosevelt for the fourth time, they were trying to find some scandal. And there was a story that began to spread that while Roosevelt was touring military locations in the Aleutian Islands up by Alaska, they had accidentally left Fala behind on one of the islands, and they had to turn around this military destroyer and go back to pick the dog up at a cost of millions of taxpayer dollars. And Roosevelt brought this up in his very first campaign speech of that year, which I got to say, his first campaign speech of that season was in September. I wish we could go back to a time when the first time you think about presidential campaigning was September.
Wouldn't that be nice? And
yeah,
not September of 2 years before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just September 1944. So like 6 weeks before the election.
What a concept.
So he brings this up in a speech before the Teamsters, and he says, I'm used to myself being attacked, and my wife and kids, they don't mind being attacked because they know it's part of the game. But Fala resents it, and his little Scotch soul is furious. And, he just goes on and on, like with a comedy routine, basically, which you can kind of watch. You can watch this speech on YouTube, and it just made his opponents look really silly. I mean, he does deny the charge, but like, the first couple of times I watched it, I didn't even notice that he denied the charge. I just thought he's just sort of talking around this, but it's funny, but he humiliated his opponents and won an easy re-election in 1944. And the Fala speech is one of the most famous, presidential animal speeches in history. The only one that would be more famous is the Checkers speech by Nixon, and Nixon wasn't running for president at the time. He was just trying to stay on the vice presidential spot for Eisenhower. Checkers, unfortunately, never made it to the White House because Nixon didn't get elected for another 18 years or 16 years after after that speech. But,
so Fala, how does Fala look?
Yeah, we've got a photo here. It's another black and white photo, of course. And this photo is showing Franklin D. Roosevelt in a convertible. It's kind of close up on the passenger seat and the driver's seat, and you can just see kind of what looks like a country field behind them with trees. And Roosevelt is wearing kind of a brimmed hat, and he's looking towards the camera. He's got glasses on as well, and he's in the driver's seat and just kind of a light colored suit. And then Fala is in the passenger seat. Fala is kind of standing on his hind legs, and Roosevelt's holding on to him by his collar, and Fala's paws are peeking over the side of the convertible. So Fala is black, and you can just see his paws, kind of his shoulders, and then the top of his head. He's got a long face, and the hair on his face is kind of a bit shorter, and then he's got longer hair around the kind of top of his head and cheeks and body. And then he's got short-haired, very pointy, triangular ears. And it looks like from the picture that he's either probably dark gray or black. And then there's another picture of Fala. So in this picture, it looks like his hair might have grown out a little bit more. He's sitting in some grass. It's a close-up of him. His tongue is out, and he's looking off towards the right of the photo. And then his pointed ears here, it looks like the other photo, they must have been trimmed, because here he's got like tufts of black hair coming off of his ears. And his hair is also kind of cascading down into his eyes a little bit as well. And he's got a little bit of a beard. Kind of a short tail. He looks kind of like he might be, it's hard to tell because there's nothing else in this photo, but it looks like he might be corgi size, maybe kind of like longer and like small, medium.
They're a small dog, smaller dog.
I always think of Jock from Lady and the Tramp,
Right?
Of course, yeah.
Andrew, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is it true that one of the presidents had was it a crocodile? Is that?
The alligator story.
Yes,
okay.
The alligator story.
So there are a couple things here. Herbert Hoover's son did have pet alligators, but they never lived in the White House. They lived in a townhome in the 1920s that would have been in D.C., but This was prior to Herbert Hoover becoming president. So those alligators never would have made it to the White House.
Darn.
The more famous alligator story is that the Marquis de Lafayette, while he was touring the country in the 1820s, brought an alligator and gave it to President John Quincy Adams as a gift, and that John Quincy Adams kept it in a bathtub in the White House. Now,
Sure,
when I
that's
took
what-
over this job, like we would talk about that, and that was like something we led with because it's an interesting story and people like it. And then we had a different historian contact us asking for primary sources, and like the closest we could find anything was 1870. And so nothing really contemporaneous with that time period. And then
Wow.
Snopes got involved, and Snopes determined that it was probably apocryphal. So I tell people, like, it's a great story and I really want it to be true. In part because I love the Marquis de Lafayette, and in part because it's an alligator in a bathtub at the White House, but it's
Along with-
probably not true.
Along with the
darn.
gin that they made in the
Darn.
bathtub too, right?
Yeah. That's probably more likely. I mean, Warren Harding during Prohibition, I mean, like he drank like a fish, apparently. I don't know. So
Okay.
It looks like
we-
we have one more picture of Fala here. There was another link.
Oh,
It's a pretty cute one. He's actually sitting in FDR's lap, and the photos, it looks like the photo was taken from like the ground, so it's like looking up at them. And then you can see, I believe it's that same convertible behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just looking towards the camera.
Mm-hmm. So, Andrew, we're running toward the top of the hour, and in the time we have left, we have about maybe 10, 15 minutes, Janine, would you say?
yeah.
Yeah, and we want to check out your gift shop, but is there one other place you'd want us to go before we move to the gift shop?
let's go back to the White House Pets page, and this time we'll click on 1953 to the present. And I want to look at my absolute favorite, White House pet, which would be John F. Kennedy's dog, Pushinka. And the reason I love Pushinka, it's an amazing story. The story goes like this. In 1961, Kennedy goes to Vienna to have a summit with Nikita Khrushchev from the Soviet Union. And at dinner one night during the summit, Khrushchev is seated next to Jacqueline Kennedy. They're talking, and he's sort of bragging about the Russian space program, which was ahead of the American space program. And he tells her that one of the dogs they had sent into space and brought back, a dog named Strelka, had just had puppies. And Jackie just kind of offhandedly says, "Oh, well, you must send me one of those puppies." And, a few weeks later, this little dog shows up at the White House with a Russian passport, and her name's
Aw.
Pushinka.
Aw.
And the FBI and the Secret Service have to check her out for bugs, like listening devices and explosive devices. They determine that she's safe. They bring her into the family. She eventually has puppies with one of Kennedy's other dogs, a Scottish Terrier named Charlie. So there's a little Cold War romance going on there.
Ooh.
And then the other part of this that I absolutely think is fascinating is, Kennedy and Khrushchev have this backdoor exchange of gifts. Khrushchev sends a dog for Mrs. Kennedy. He sends something carved out of a whale tusk for the president. The president sends back a ship in a bottle. All this stuff going on behind the scenes that's not publicly known at the time. I mean, people knew about the dog, but
Right.
the level of backdoor communication was sort of unknown. And so there are historians who've speculated that this backdoor communication allowed them to step back from the brink during the Cuban Missile Crisis, because all of their military advisors in the United States and in the Soviet Union and in Cuba, a lot of the military people wanted to go nuclear. They wanted to just okay, we're going to have a war. We should be the first ones to send the bomb because that way we can wipe out, most of them. And one of the American Air Force generals actually said, if the war ends and there are 2 Americans and only 1 Soviet left alive, we win. And that was the thinking of these military people. But Kennedy and Khrushchev were able to step back from that and maintain peace. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's hard to look at somebody who sent you a puppy and think
Yeah.
like that person is evil. I should drop a bomb on them.
Yes.
You know, like
And also, oh wait, we can't drop a bomb on the Americans. They have our dog.
Yeah.
Oh,
we can't nuke Pushinka. Come on, guys.
well, yeah, we're not going to be able to get Pushinka back. And I mean, and after all,
Right.
I've got the ship that's in the bottle.
Yeah, I got a
Yeah,
ship in a
right.
bottle. You know, come on, guys. This is, you know, it seems nice.
Imagine. Exactly. Well, that's the relationship. I mean, and yeah, maybe it wasn't your like best friend kind of relationship, but the fact is they had a relationship, at least cordially, they
Mhm.
had a relationship that, might have saved
Some
the world.
humanity there.
Yeah,
It-
that's
It's like when we talk about separating the art from the artist. I guess, like as a politician, you have to be able to separate your political opponent from their rhetoric and from their
Yeah.
ideology and see them as a person, which is one of the things that I like about the Presidential Pet Museum, because you don't have to like Joe Biden to think his dog is cute, or
Right.
George Bush, or, any of the others.
right.
It's about the animals, and it's sort of an apolitical thing, or it should be. I mean, we try to keep
It's
it that way.
fascinating. It is fascinating, and I just love the way you tell the story. I mean, you could be on somebody's late night stand-up comedy stage.
Well, this feels like that. I mean, I'm really having a great time with you folks.
We try
We're
to
having
we try
way
to
too
keep
much
it
fun.
entertaining. We've had content that necessitated a little bit more seriousness, but not to take away from that content. But there's shows like this one where, honestly, we're just having a good time because this stuff is very interesting. I thought it would be interesting. I had no idea it would be this entertaining. And I hope Zoomtastic Land and YouTubeville enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you, Andrew, before we go to the gift shop, I have to ask you about my favorite presidential pet, which was President Ford's golden retriever, because I love golden
Liberty.
retrievers.
Oh.
And that was when I first learned about golden retrievers. And I was
Aw.
like, oh yeah. And now I've had 4 of them as guide dogs. So yay,
Yeah,
waiting for my
Liberty
fifth
was a
one.
beautiful golden retriever, and she gave birth to puppies in the White House.
Yeah,
They built a
I
special
remember.
whelping box for her to have puppies.
Yes.
And the Fords were very good about like putting her up front, like on holiday cards and things like that.
Mhm.
I think there weren't very many golden retrievers. I think she might be one of
No.
the few. Just like I think the only Labrador, as far as I can remember, is one named Buddy that belonged to Bill Clinton.
Yep. Yep. The chocolate
So even though
lab.
these are near the top of our list in terms of popularity in the United States, they haven't necessarily been the most common presidentially.
Mhm.
Goldens really weren't all that well known until the Fords and Liberty.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, that kind of although they had been around since
Yeah,
the
yeah.
1800s, but they just hadn't really been that popular. And then
Mhm.
wow.
Took off.
So shall we go to the gift shop?
Let's do it.
Yes. Also, just so you know, I went to the Liberty page and there are lots of pictures of her, one of which is her posing with her newborn puppies. They're in like a white box, like a handcrafted box.
Oh.
It says Susan, Mrs. Ford, and President Ford with Liberty and her puppy, September 16th, 1975.
Oh.
So special.
And there is nothing cuter than golden retriever puppies.
They're
or
so
lab-
cute.
They're absolutely little fuzz balls of
They're all little
cuteness.
fuzzy, goldy, fuzzy looking puppies, or I would imagine. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, as I recall,
Thank
she
you,
was kind of
Sierra,
a
for
medium
doing
gold.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
so cute. Okay, so do you guys have masks in the gift shop?
There might be, but I'm not sure. I know there are like shirts and mugs, and they have, some of them have drawings of different presidents and their animals with little like jokey slogans that you can blame me for if you don't think they're funny.
Oh, excellent.
Like,
Okay,
there's one of
we gotta
Ronald Reagan
check
with his
these
dog,
out.
and it says Ronald Reagan, he got lucky.
Oh.
Or John Adams had a dog named Satan. We don't know anything else about this dog other than he had a
Oh
dog
my
named
gosh.
Satan. So
Was he the one that chased the French diplomat?
No, no. It's surprising that John Adams would have a dog named Satan, considering, we're less than 100 years removed from the Salem witch trials when he's president. So one of the mugs is like John Adams and a dog, and it says like John Adams, Satan was his best friend.
Oh.
I don't know that the John Adams Presidential Library would be too happy with me, but
No.
Well, so far
You
you're
can
not.
just say you were channeling Alexander Hamilton on that.
yeah,
So.
probably. Yeah, sit down, John.
Yep.
So
Looks like there's
You know I
a
was
shirt
gonna
with
go
the
there.
emblem.
Okay.
A shirt with the emblem. Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
we do have some more of the serious, for those who don't like their shirts to be so jokey.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to pay a visit and take a look at
Oh,
this. These are
we'll have to
great.
have you back because there was, I'm sure,
this
a
is
lot more.
way too much
I feel like
fun.
we've just scratched the surface. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
much more we could talk about, and so many
Absolutely.
more. We didn't get to Lyndon Johnson and his beagles, like
Oh
the
my
picture of him picking the
goodness.
beagles up by the
Picking
ear.
them up by the
Oh.
ears. I just remember going, don't do that.
Oh no.
Even in 1964, people were like, "Yo, don't touch the
poor
dog like
Sierra.
that."
Poor Sierra has not seen this picture. She is too young to remember this picture.
I haven't seen it. Oh my gosh, that sounds not so
Oh my
good.
gosh! So you have to go
Oh,
to the
shit.
you got to go to the pets page and show everybody this picture.
He's
Poor
picking-
Lyndon Johnson. The
He's
beagles,
picking him
I'm
up on
sure.
the ears.
He didn't even
my
understand
gosh.
it was bad. He was Johnson
Yes.
was like confused, like, "Well, what do you mean? I thought he liked it." Like
Oh no.
he's a guy from like rural West Texas at the turn of the 20th century. Like his understanding of animals and his relationship with animals would have been very different from the
These
average
are
person. So if you're looking for that picture, I think it's him is the dog, Lyndon Johnson's beagle, him.
Okay, him the dog. What year was Lyndon Johnson?
1964. So you're, like right after Kennedy, but before
Mhm.
Richard Nixon.
Gotcha. All right,
Yeah.
let's see.
And Andrew, the Obamas had, is it water?
Portuguese water dogs,
Water
yes.
dogs.
Which, yeah, I don't know
Supposedly hypoallergenic, although I've also read that no animals are actually
That's
hypoallergenic.
Yep.
It's just levels of dander.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different
Yeah, the
type
Cape-
of.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did
Oh
you
my
find
gosh,
a picture
I
there,
see the
Sierra?
picture. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! You see
You want
the
to
Can you
picture?
describe it
Yes.
to people so they can leave on a note of
Yeah.
rage?
Oh yeah.
So it says President Johnson caused a storm of protests when he lifted him by his ears. LBJ library photo. And so basically it shows him leaning over the dog who's like on some pavement on a leash. And then has one ear in each hand, and he's just like lifting the dog so he's standing on his hind legs. And then it shows like 4 onlookers kind of like watching him. And like one of them, or maybe 2 of them, are smiling, and then 2 of them kind of have their face in like a grimace. Yeah.
But what does the dog's face
The dog,
look like?
honestly, the expression on the dog's face looks like a pretty chill dog. It's kind of got his tongue out and his kind of mouth is upturned, so I'm not sure what that's about. But
He does
This is
his
just
This is the
awesome
dog's
like-
first time being picked up like that.
yeah, he's like, "Oh, what's going on? I'm getting attention."
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
it's just perfect Lyndon Johnson, because everything you hear about him, like just in his personal life, putting policy aside, he was just so like rough around the edges, and
Yeah, he
like
was.
Yep.
Yeah.
like
Even the
having
name for
meetings
the
with
dog.
people in the bathroom, and
Yep. Oh yeah.
all kinds-
Oh,
or like
yeah.
he had a car that was amphibious. He could drive it into a lake, but he didn't tell people that. And he would take them out on his ranch and then just drive like 80 miles an hour into the water and scare the crap out of the people that were with him. Like that's Lyndon Johnson.
So why not pick the dog up by the ear?
Why not
Oh
pick
my
the dog? Yeah,
gosh.
this is just how we live. It's just that big LBJ energy,
Yeah. There you go.
Andrew, do you have a contact, or if people want to
Yeah.
reach out
Let's
to you?
tell about.
Let's
Do you
plug
guys
your-
have a
Let's
Facebook
plug you so you
page?
can get picked up
Yeah.
on
Oh my
national
gosh.
TV.
Get
well,
you,
I will say I've recently signed a contract with HarperCollins for a book called Canines in Chief, which is scheduled to come out next January on the anniversary or around the anniversary of the inauguration. So that's what I've
Awesome.
been spending my daytime hours working on now. but if people want to get in touch with me or, send me an email to ask questions, historian@presidentialpetmuseum.com will take you to my inbox. And so historian@presidentialpetmuseum.com. I'm happy to answer any questions. I would love to come back if,
Oh, we
a
would
year or
love
two
to
down the
have
road, you
back.
folks want to do more of this.
We're not going to wait that long.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Well, hey,
Say.
you let me know, and I will be there. I will talk with Janine and schedule it because this has been so much fun.
Oh,
Glad
it
you had a good
has.
time.
Most
We have enjoyed
definitely.
it.
And I don't know how we're going to follow up tearing the French ambassador's pants off, but next week, it's an image that's going to be in my mind for a long time now.
Me too.
Oh my gosh. But next week is huge because we're going to Mars. Oh yeah. We have Dana Lambert, who is one of our IRA explorers. She works at NASA as a project manager, and she is bringing with her one of the NASA astronomers and a project engineer from the Perseverance rover project. So if you have questions about Mars, about the Perseverance program, about anything having to do with NASA, we're going to have a special 90-minute show to talk about this. They're going to show us some videos and some photographs that maybe we haven't seen before. We're also going to listen to some sounds from Mars. How cool. And that will be again starting, starting at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Friday the 26th. So get ready because we're going to Mars. I said the graphic for this is going to be a little alien and a little Martian guy, and he's got his cell phone and he's got the IRA logo up there, and the little cartoon above says, thank you for calling IRA. What would you like to do today? And the little Martian guy says, can you describe that thing out in my backyard? And you've got the rover in the background. So, we'll see what we can do. I don't think I can top Andrew's snarky pet shirts, but hey, I'll try.
Well, I am fascinated. I think I'll be back to be an observer next week to learn about Mars.
Do. This is going to be great fun. And of course, with one of our wonderful IRA agents like Sierra to describe everything to us. Thank you so much, Sierra. This was totally very fun.
Much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And now that we've traumatized you with with OBJ, thank you so much again, Stephanie, as always, for your wonderful hosting skills. And thanks, Andrew, for being with us today. And Ryan, pushing the buttons in the background. Yay.
Yes. And thank you, Janine. This is all good.
Yeah, everybody on YouTube and on Zoom. We will see you next week